All right. Thank you guys so much for hopping on a special night of the week team call. We usually do our Tuesday night team calls, but tonight, since we have a very special guest speaker and he was available, well, kind of available on
Yeah,
Wednesday,
right. Right.
we changed this week to Wednesday. So before I hop on, like before I introduce who our guest speaker is, I know I shouted him all over our page, but I wanted to tell you guys a little bit about how I found this book. So first off, you guys know a lot of us, I mean, all of us are completely obsessed with personal development and improving ourselves and, you know, growing and becoming better people. So one day I seen, you guys know my girl, Cindy Atkinson, she made a post about a podcast from Zig Ziglar that she listened to. And she was crying and she was saying that she listened to this amazing podcast about this book called Lovable. And she tagged me in it and she's like, Vicki, you need to read this book. This book is something that you would need to read. And I was like, okay, Amazon cart, click, check out, click. 2 days later, I got this book. I was not able to put this book down since. Ironically, as I share a lot of my personal development, my biggest takeaways and stuff all over social media, one of my followers and now friends actually knows Kelly in real life. And she was like, she reached out to me. She's like, if you want his autograph, I don't know if you know about this, Kelly, but she offered up your autograph for me. And I was like, I can't part with this book yet. When I'm done with it, I will totally send it to you. And you could be like, hey, can you do it? But it was just really random. And then she told me, like, she gave me the little tip. She's like, hey, you know, he guest speaks on, you know, public events and stuff. And I was like, oh my gosh, I need my girls. I need their significant others. I need everyone to hear this, to hear what he has to say. So I reached out to Kelly and lo and behold, he's here. So let me introduce who Kelly is. Kelly is a licensed clinical psychologist and co-founder of Artisan Clinical Associates in Naperville, Illinois.
Naperville. Yep.
Naperville. Okay.
Yep.
In 2012, he discovered writing was the thing he never knew he always wanted to do. So he began the now popular blog Untangled. And he actually talks about it on his Facebook group or on his Facebook page. So if you guys search him, Dr. Kelly Flanagan, you guys could see his Facebook live videos on this. But where he writes weekly about the redemption of our personal, relational, and global lives. I'm getting really excited, so I'm like, my mind is moving faster than my mouth.
I will make more mistakes than you, I guarantee. So.
I doubt it. But you know what? Hey, you fit right in already.
There we go.
Kelly is married to another clinical psychologist named Kelly because they decided to make life even a little bit more confusing than it already is. The Kellys, as they are called by friends and family, have 3 children, and they have a deal with them. They teach the kids how to grow up, and the kids teach them how to grow young. It is unclear who is helping who the most. Kelly and his family live in a small town in north central Illinois. And with that said, I am going to hand this call over to Kelly.
All right. Well, thank you for that introduction, and thanks everybody for being here. Those sorts of introductions always make me a little nervous because I'm not going to live up to that hype, I promise. But I thought I'd just start off by spending a little bit more time introducing myself and telling you my story. A lot of which I share in Lovable, but not all of which I share in Lovable. I've lived my life in a bit of a circle. I grew up in a small town in rural Illinois called Dixon, Illinois, which is has anyone ever heard of Dixon? It's the hometown of Ronald Reagan, actually. Well, we have 2 claims to fame. Well, we have several. Ronald Reagan, Charles Walgreen, the founder of the Walgreens Corporation, and Rita Crunwell, who is the biggest municipal embezzler of all time, stole $72 million from Dixon over 10 years just recently. So the town is in recovery. But anyhow, so I grew up in Dixon, Illinois, hometown of Ronald Reagan. And growing up in Dixon, for me, there was this assumption that living in a small town, rural area, that the goal of life was to get out and to do something bigger, something better, something that mattered in the world, because nothing that was happening in Dixon could possibly matter in the world. And so that was really something that was always a part of my drive, was a sense that if I was going to be good enough, I needed to get out into the world and do something that would make me good enough. And I tell some of the stories in Lovable that contributed to that, that sense that I wasn't enough unless I did something that was more than enough. And we can get into some of those today. But so I left Dixon for the University of Illinois at Champaign-Urbana and spent 4 years getting my undergraduate degree there in psychology. I then went on to Penn State for graduate school in clinical psychology. I went there determined not to get into a relationship right away, and met my wife on day one of the orientation program. It was probably a little bit of a sneak attack because her name was Kelly. So it wasn't possible that I could possibly marry this woman. And yet it happened. So in graduate school at Penn State, we got married 2 years into graduate school. We had our first kid another year into graduate school. And then eventually we relocated back here to Illinois to do our residencies and finish up our degrees. My wife went on to become a professor of psychology at Wheaton College, which is a sort of a prestigious Christian liberal arts school. She spent 10 years there and became tenured, ran their graduate psychology program. I established a successful practice in the suburbs of Chicago. And basically we had made it. Everything that I thought I needed to leave Dixon for, I had found. Had a great wife and 3 kids, and she had a successful career and I had a successful career. And in many ways, it was absolutely and totally unfulfilling. One of my favorite anecdotes is told by one of my favorite sort of philosopher theologians, Peter Rollins. And he jokes around, this Irish guy's got this great Irish brogue, and he jokes around that that the coyote in the Roadrunner cartoons. Does anybody remember the Roadrunner cartoons? Raise your hand if you remember Roadrunner. Coyote's always trying to catch the Roadrunner, right? He's always using this equipment from the Acme company to try to catch the Roadrunner, and it's always backfiring on him, right? Well, Peter Rollins jokes that he thinks that the coyote was actually sabotaging his own equipment because he didn't really want to catch the Roadrunner. Because what do you do the day after you catch the Roadrunner, right? The day after you get everything you think that is going to make you happy and satisfy you and fulfill you, what do you do the next day when you discover actually that didn't do it either, right? And so my wife and I had sort of our Roadrunner moment where we had caught everything that we thought was going to make us happy, and it wasn't doing it. In fact, we were getting burnt out and exhausted, chasing the dream. And this sort of triggered for both of us a process of beginning to, amongst other things, beginning to look for our sense of worth on the inside of us rather than on the outside of us, rather than in the things we do, beginning to look for our sense of worth in who we are. And that was a process that unfolded over a number of years. And what we eventually realized is that neither one of us was doing exactly what we desired to do. My wife was in a very prestigious position and teaching people how to do therapy, but what she'd always really wanted to do was to provide therapy to children herself, be a therapist herself, provide therapy specifically to kids who couldn't afford it typically. And I'd always wanted to be a writer. So a couple of years ago, we asked ourselves, okay, well, if we don't have to do all these things we've been doing to be worthy, if we actually are already worthy and we just get to do whatever we want, what do we want to do? And what we decided was that we wanted to move back to that little hometown in rural Illinois that I started out in. And she is practicing here as a therapist now. And I'm practicing in Naperville, Illinois. I'm doing that 2 days a week. And then I spend the rest of my week here in Dixon. So have kind of lived in a circle and realized that in many ways what I was running from was myself, my true self, and the fact that my true self is really most at home here in this small town, and it's where I feel most at peace and most settled. And so once I didn't have to keep chasing that sense of worth, once I began to sense it within me and remember it within me, I was able just to get to be who I am. And so our family is enjoying living here. My wife, true to her true self, figured out how to get elected to the school board within 2 years, which is really hard to do in a rural town when no one knows you because she's a foreigner. But she builds community really quickly and really well. So that's where she's at tonight at the school board meeting. So that's a little bit about me. Vicki, I don't know. I don't want to monopolize with the monologue here. I don't know how much you like to make this a conversation versus just a talk, but I did want to start out by introducing myself.
Well, sometimes I like to put them on the spot and have them be engaging, like include them in the conversation. So it's completely up to you and how you want to run it. I know we're talking about worthiness. And so like if you want to ask any questions, they could post it or answer in the chat box
Yeah.
to be engaging. So we don't have all
Gotcha.
30 people chiming in. But afterwards, if you want to open it up for any questions, you
Well, so yeah, so I'll give you a little bit more of a detail about, so what I've presented in Lovable, how it's arisen out of my own personal experience and my professional experiences. And then I'm more than happy to have dialogue about this. I did a Facebook Live this morning for about 40 minutes. It was mostly dialogue. I love that. So if you want to jump in, ask a question, just dialogue about this, feel free to do so. So one of the things that started to dawn on me personally, and I started to realize about my clinical work, is that basically when people come in asking me for help as a psychologist, they're usually asking for help in one of two areas. They're saying, my relationships are stuck, or my relationship isn't working and I need help with that. Or I don't have a terribly clear sense of direction for my life and I need help figuring that out. And I spent a lot of years trying to help people directly with those two kinds of problems, until eventually I started to realize that the real problem was the fact that most of us are trying to get our sense of worth from our relationships and from our accomplishments. Rather than our relationships and our accomplishments being an expression of a sense of worth we're already connected with, they become this sort of desperate search to prove that we're worthy or to find someone who will make us feel worthy. And so that led to the structure of Lovable. And the premise of Lovable is that we're all sort of engaging in the search for three things: worthiness, belonging, and purpose. But that search has to happen in a particular order in order for us to progress and to become healed and whole. And so the idea is that we want to begin by reconnecting with the sense of worthiness that's existed within us all along, and that we've gotten disconnected from. And that once we've begun to develop a sense of reconnection with that sense of worthiness in us, then we begin to feel just enough courage to start to show ourselves truly to people, to reveal who we really are to the people around us. And up to that point, the connections that we've had are sort of partial at best, because we know that people are only connecting with a certain persona or a certain false self. But once we begin to really embrace and enjoy who we are, we can feel comfortable showing our true self to people, and people can really connect with who we are. And then a real sense of belonging starts to build in our life. And then what happens from there is, in the context of that sense of belonging and that community, we actually start to get to tell people what we want to do. And whereas most people might look at us and say, "Yeah, you're crazy. That's silly. You shouldn't do that. That's nuts." The people we belong to will say, "You know what? That's exactly who you are. I love that about you. Go do that thing." So in that community and in that place of belonging, we get to confess what we want to do with our lives. We get to communicate about it and dialogue about it and figure out if it's what we truly want to do. And then we get encouraged to go out and do it from that place of belonging. And so then we're free to move into pursuing our passion, finding our sense of purpose in life through that. So that's the premise of Lovable. And as I talk about Lovable, it's a cyclical thing. It's not this linear progression. I found my sense of purpose and now I've arrived. It's more about trusting that even as you move into practicing your passion, things are going to stir up more self-doubt and more shame within you, and you're going to have to cycle back through that work of worthiness all over again and go on from there. So
Can I ask you a quick question real quick?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So when we're seeking to find worthiness within ourselves, do you think it's actually harder for us because we're starting to become aware of the things that we struggled with, like letting go or holding on to or seeking outside? Do you think that it actually it's harder before it gets easier because we're becoming aware of all that stuff?
Yeah, that's a great question. And yeah, I would say the reason that most of us don't reconnect with our sense of worthiness is that it almost always lies on the other side of our greatest pain and our deepest shame. So if you think about it like this, we come into the world, we're given a true self, right? And this true self is good enough, it's sufficient, it's worthy. And somewhere along the way, usually at a very young age, we encounter shame, which is the message that we're not good enough. And it comes in so many different forms. And I always like to caution parents at this stage who are starting to worry when I'm talking, like, oh my gosh, am I like shaming my children and sending them the message that they're not good enough? And my answer is yes. I probably did it a dozen times to my kids today in various ways. So don't panic. But the idea being that we come into this world with this worthy true self, and we take it as self-evident as young children, but then we encounter shame and the message that we're not good enough the way that we are. And so we start to think we have to build another self, a false self that will be more presentable to the world, which means when we're moving back in the direction of our true self, we have to go through all of those messages, all of those beliefs that we are not good enough, that we're unworthy. And so it gets harder before it gets better. There's no doubt about it. And I think that's why so many of us tend to want to make that outward journey rather than the inward journey. The inward journey is towards our pain. The outward journey is usually towards something more pleasurable at first, but it doesn't get us where we want to go.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah. So I'm happy to answer questions. How about this? I'll just talk and then anybody can jump in with a question.
You have no idea what you just opened yourself up to.
Well, please do. Please jump in with a question. So, I started blogging when I realized that I wanted to write, and part of what I did with blogging was I was writing letters to my children, trying to encourage them to remember their sense of worthiness. And a couple letters went viral, and my daughter and I ended up on the Today Show, and so I got connected with a literary agent who's fantastic through that experience. But I'd never written a book, so she started teaching me how to write a book. And she said, send me proposals, tell me what you want to write about. And so I kept sending her proposals rooted around this idea of worthiness. And I remember one night she texted me back and she said, well, this worthiness thing is great work if you can get it, Doc, but how does a person become worthy? I remember I was reading the text. I was in the kitchen with my wife and I got so frustrated. I'm like, you don't become worthy. You are worthy. You just forgot it and you need to remember it. And my wife's like, you should probably let her know that that's what you're thinking. That's important. And I did. And she said, yeah, that's going to be a key concept here. So the idea is that we have each of us, and this is a cliche that I tried to avoid for years, but it's just true and I can't avoid it anymore, that each of us has a little kid inside of us who is at the heart of our sense of worthiness, a little kid that knew he or she was worthy all along. And it's the wounded little kid who started to doubt it as well. And so much of our healing is about getting reconnected with that little kid that is still inside of us, who still represents our true self, and getting to know him or her again. The ways that he or she is wounded, but all the ways that he or she is absolutely good enough. And so a big part of any journey is back towards that little kid, but it means it's through a bunch of experiences that have been really painful ever since that kid first experienced shame.
So I have another question for you.
Yeah.
So with worthiness, and when we struggle, so we're all Beachbody coaches here.
Okay.
Some of us are just some of us are significant others of Beachbody coaches, which means is just as awesome. But with Beachbody coaches, we help others. So we build relationships, we build that trust and that bond and that loyalty and that connection with other people. How does feeling worthy in your own self, how does that contribute to building connections with other people, whether they're, for your business or your own personal relationship with your significant other or your children, or how does that play into action?
Yeah, absolutely. And I get often asked that question as someone who's seen as maybe a parenting expert, although my wife cautions me that I don't know very much about parenting, and she's right. But yeah, how do you raise worthy kids, for instance? How do you help these people that you're in charge of, whether it's your Beachbody coaching clients or your own children, experience a sense of worthiness? And the reality is we can only take somebody as far as we've come. It's the true self in me that recognizes the true self in everybody else. My shame will only see the shameful things in other people. My false self will only be able to relate to the false self in other people. My ego will only be able to relate to the ego in other people. And it's my true self that can relate to the true self in others. So the most important thing that we can do to raise worthy children and to coach our clients into a sense of worthiness is to be connected with our own sense of worthiness, and being able to see them from that place within us. So it's really inner work of ours that lays the foundation for helping our people do their inner work. I just wrote a short blog post for my practice, and the title of it is, I think, where any therapist, or the source of any therapist's authority. And the thesis of the post is that authority is not about difference, it's about distance. In other words, I'm not an authority in this area because I'm different than you, that I'm like somehow better, or I got training that made me better than you. I'm an authority because I'm a little bit further along the path. And my job is simply to call you along and close that. I'm wanting to divest myself of authority, right? Because if my authority is based on the fact that I'm just a stone's throw ahead of you on this path called being human, my job is to call you up to where I'm at, and now I'm no longer an authority over you, and you have the authority yourself to do that for others. And so that, in my mind, is a big part of how we cultivate a sense of worthiness in others, is that we do it for ourselves and relate to people from that sense of worthiness. Because as soon as we're relating from a sense of worthiness, we're not shaming people, we're not judging them, we're not comparing ourselves to them, we're not comparing them to others. We're seeing them for who they are underneath whatever messiness they have, and we're telling them about it, and we're seeing it until they see it for themselves.
I love that you said that. And, I know this is not like my therapy session or anything, but I want everyone to understand, so when I first started my own health and weight loss journey, Kelly, I used to weigh 268 pounds, and I started in 2009. And at first I was only working on external, right? Like, you had to run on the treadmill and eat celery and whatever. Let's not lie. I still ate Taco Bell, but I was running on the treadmill and whatever, working on the outside. I did not start working on myself internally until 2012. So that's 3 years of just working on the outside. And like you said before, once you get to a certain spot and you find out you're not happy, what happens? So I was still carrying all the shame and stuff. And when I talk to people, I would talk to them I'm still hurting too. I'm still, cause I was just learning about self-love and self-worthiness and all this stuff, and not feeling enough,
Yes.
But now, because I've worked on that, I could connect with people. I know their pain, but it took me so long to actually be okay with my shame, not be okay with my shame, but know what I was shameful of, and not hold on to that, and, kind of let that stuff go. And sometimes it still sneaks back in, but I'm able to talk to people better because I forgave myself for a lot of the stuff, or I forgave whoever. And I feel like it helps connections. It helps interactions better when someone's like, I'm struggling with this, or this is what I'm going through. And you're like, you know what? I went through that same stuff. And because I was forgiving, because I was aware of what happened, a lot of the times I think we bottle down our shame. We bottle all that stuff down because it's not fun to work through. It's not fun to talk about. But instead it hurts us in the long run instead of helping us. And I think that if a lot of people came to terms and became aware of, their past, or whatever happened, or the mistakes that they've made, and they become aware of that, they can't go in the back and fix that. But if they're aware of it now, they can move from it.
So I know you said this isn't your therapy session, but if you don't mind, so I'm just curious. I think we'll all benefit from your answer. So 2009 to 2012, and then in 2012, there's something about your experience that says this can't just be about outer work. This has to be about what led to the shift for you? What reoriented you?
Well, Beachbody actually came into my life. So Beachbody is all about transforming your life from the inside out. They preach one of the, I wouldn't call it requirements, but one of the things that they suggest that you do every day is personal development. And I'm going to be honest with you, Kelly, and I'm sure I'm not the only person on this call, but when I first heard of self-help books, I was like, that's a section in the bookstore that I skip. I am not going to listen to that or whatever, and, but I think, Brené Brown, The Gifts of Imperfection was the very first book I read. And it was such a tough read because it was everything I needed to hear and needed to read. And so every day I'd open it up and I'd just sob and sob. And I'm like, because we all think that we need this perfection. Yeah. And we struggle with that. And so reading that, I was just like, damn it, I need these books. And I just kept going, and it's like, I can't stop. So honestly, it was Beachbody that helped.
Yeah. Yeah. Brene Brown too, one of her central gifts is writing self-help books for people who don't read self-help books. And because of that, she is a bridge to a lot of other self-help books. So all of us authors owe her a debt of gratitude. And Beachbody then kind of picked up from there and cultivated that more interior focus rather than just the exterior.
Oh yeah.
And I didn't know that about Beachbody. So that's awesome to hear. Yeah. That's very cool. One of my favorite, it's interesting because it feels like you lived like a lifetime there in 3 years, right? You did your 3 years of searching for worthiness in all of these outer things, and then discovered that it wasn't working. And you did that very quickly. One of my favorite spiritual mentors, Richard Rohr, he says, the thing for most of us that leads to that shift, that more interior focus, is either great love or great suffering. And I would say that for me personally, it was around 2008 when I realized that I was inflicting a lot of pain on my wife and kids because I was so angry all the time and so frustrated with them for not making me feel lovable that I was passing on an awful lot of shame and hurt to them. And I love them too much to keep doing that to them. And so I needed to do something about it. And that's where my journey started to shift and move towards taking responsibility for my own sense of worthiness and expecting it from them. And that caused some emotion.
A little bit. I think we've all been there where we feel like we cause conflict in others, or we feel like we're an inconvenience because of our own issues or our own self-worth,
Yep.
So.
Yeah. One of the stories I tell in Lovable is it's a night there was a night where I woke up. It was like a kind of a late winter, early spring night, and I woke up and the bed covers were all on my wife's side of the bed. And I started making the bed, all frustrated that she had pulled the bed covers from me once again in the cold. And I literally, it took me halfway through making the bed for me to remember that my wife slept 1,000 miles away that night. She had taken the kids on spring break and I had stayed home, and it hit me like, oh my gosh, like I've been blaming her for like almost 15 years for stealing my bed covers. And like, I've been pushing them off. That's been my fault. And it hit me like, I do the same thing with my shame. Like I put all of the responsibility on her for healing my shame and helping me find a sense of worthiness. This is on me. I can't be doing that to her. This is my responsibility. And so for me, that was a big part of my shift. And, I think that's something that we just want to be paying attention to, is what is it that drives us to want to begin to search for our sense of worthiness and our true self inside of us, rather than in other people or in other things or things we do.
So what kind of action steps can someone take that has been struggling in this area, or maybe that they have been improving already, but they feel like they could be helping themselves?
Yeah. Yep. So this is a dramatic oversimplification, but it helps, I think, to oversimplify it in this case. So one of the things that I've come to trust is true about every single one of us is that most of the time, the voice that is playing inside of us that we hear and that we're most conscious of is what I call the voice of shame, right? It's telling us we're not good enough. It's comparing us and we're losing to other people. It's telling us we need to do more, be thinner, be wealthier, be stronger, be smarter, be more popular, be whatever. And it's real. I mean, it's talking all the time. It's very subtle. The first thing we need to do is the first task is we need to be attentive enough and mindful enough of that voice to be listening to it all the time and to begin to get a sense of distance from it. Because when we're not paying attention to it and recognizing it as a voice within us, we sort of think of it as ourself. We get our sense of self confused with that voice of shame, and we think it's telling us the truth about who we are. We think it is who we are. And so to begin to observe that voice and experience it as a voice within us rather than who we actually are, I think that's first and foremost. And then the other thing that I know that is true about everybody that I've worked with, it's been true about me and my experience, is that there is a second voice inside. It is a voice that arises from your true self. In Lovable, I call it the voice of grace. And that voice is a voice that is constantly speaking to us about our worthiness. It's constantly speaking to us about the worthiness of everyone around us. It's constantly, I'll give you an example, make this a little bit more concrete because I know it's sort of abstract. About, I guess it's maybe about a month or so ago now, I had a podcast interview on a podcast that was probably the biggest audience that I'd interviewed with so far. And I got off the interview and I knew I botched it. I knew that I'd started to get sort of ashamed in the interview. And so I'd started to try to come off as an authority figure rather than a real human being, which is never a good idea. And I just, this voice of shame, dude, you messed it up. This was your chance. This was, all the people who listened to it, who might have, just constant, this, relentlessly for about 2 days, that voice. And I knew my task was to listen to that voice of shame as it was speaking to me until it finally quieted down and I could hear a different voice within me. About 48 hours later, I was on a bike ride and I'd spent the bike ride listening to that voice of shame. And then suddenly I heard this other voice that I call the voice of grace. And it said to me, Kelly, it's hard to learn on a big stage, but I'm proud of you for getting up there. And what was the grace in that wasn't, oh, you did fine. Oh, I'm sure people liked it. Oh, don't worry about it. Because then it's still speaking the language of shame, right? It's just sort of arguing with shame, trying to present the other side. Oh yeah, this was super important. But you didn't mess it up as bad as you thought you did. It wasn't that at all. It was like, yeah, you sort of sucked, dude. And that's hard. That's really hard to suck when it matters. But I'm proud of you for getting up there, and you'll learn from it, and you'll go out and you'll do it again, and you'll have other mistakes. And this is sort of how the voice of grace within us sounds. I think I heard it first most clearly out of my therapist's mouth. I was beating myself up one day for doing or saying something that someone had sort of, I think, perceived as arrogant. And he goes, Kelly, do you think you're sort of an arrogant person? And I said, I really do. I think I'm arrogant. And he looks at me and goes, I do too, about as much as the rest of us. And it was just this like welcome. It was like, oh, like I'm just human, and that's okay. I don't need to be something that I'm not. And so that's what I think this other voice, this voice of grace, is constantly doing. It's okay to be human. It's okay to be messy. Let's just try to be closer and closer to who you are supposed to be, your true self. And let's spend a lifetime trying to do that together. And so that to me, when you ask, well, how do we do this? We practice mindfulness of the voice of shame until it begins to quiet down just long enough for us to hear that voice of grace breaking through. And that's happening now inside of us. And that's a place that we can turn to reliably and faithfully. And that's sort of a game changer.
Thank you for that. I have another question for you. Oh, no, never mind.
Cindy has a question. What? I'm like, Vicki, you're not going to dominate this. I was like, I'm on mute before she started talking. So I had a quick question for you.
Yeah.
So obviously we are in health and fitness. And so we deal with a lot of people that are on weight loss journeys like Vicki, people who have they're focusing on not just weight loss, but total health and wellness. And, we get people from who aren't overweight at all to, 150, 200, 300 pounds overweight, and there does happen to be you see a lot of shame in that. And I think that a lot of times with that kind of, our name of our company is called Beachbody, which that was like a weird name because it's like kind of like depicts a an image, you know, that like, I really don't feel like the company is, but it is what it is, you know?
Sure.
But already in just the name of the company, right, it does kind of that image, right? And so one thing that I see with a lot of my clients and people that I work with is that trying to help them through that shame as someone who's trying to get, you know, I'm on my own shame journey, you know, as it is, and then trying to guide them when we have things where, you know, if someone's trying to follow a meal plan or they're trying to get a certain workout program in and they miss that, and they have a really hard time separating that, the act of, you know, I didn't eat something that I planned on eating, with like, I'm a bad human, or, you know, they tend to absorb it like that. So do you have any advice for how we can help people kind of move more away from that and really focus? Because I really feel like that's what, it's the emotion that blocks people. Not, I mean, the task is easy. I think everyone knows how to lose weight, but it's like we own our mistakes. Does that make sense? Like, and helping people get past that. Like,
yeah. I think, and I think that's the reason a lot of people don't even get started, right? They know that they'll miss a goal. They know that they won't follow the plan for a week, and they know how it feels to assume that their actions are who they are. And so if they failed that week, then they are a failure. That's sort of a core mechanism in shame, is that what I do is who I am, and beginning to differentiate self from actions is really important. You know, in fact, Caitlin and I did our bedtime routine before we got on here tonight, and we have a routine where I say the Lord's Prayer with her, and then I say to her every night, "Are you beautiful on the outside?" And she says yes. And I say, "Where are you the most beautiful?" And she says, "On the inside." The importance of separating our sense of identity from our bodies and from our actions is so critical to begin to resonate with a sense of beauty that is not so fickle. And I think I go back to that analogy of the coyote and the roadrunner. Why are you chasing the roadrunner, right? Physical health is a beautiful thing. Chase it, go for it, go after it. But why are you chasing it? Do you think that you become a better person once you're in physically healthy shape? Because that's not true. There's nothing that you can do to make yourself a better or a worse person. Your worth is constant, and it's not going to fluctuate. And so I think I'm not sure I'm entirely answering your question. You asked for advice about how to disconnect those two things, didn't you? Cindy, can you say more? Cindy?
I muted myself again. Sorry. Yeah, or just helping people, really get past that, because I've kind of changed my whole mindset about that, because I really kind of feel like a lot of times why people do fail with their weight loss, why there's all these statistics out there for weight loss, is because they're so focused on that external thing, and they disconnect from their own bodies and what their bodies want to do and what their minds are doing, and how they're connecting to their own experience of it all, like why they're doing it. And so we just have so many people that struggle, that we want to help, that come to us for help. And for me, one of the biggest roadblocks that I see with people I talk to is that they really do own that failure type environment. Like if I don't get the results I thought I would get from this program, I'm a failure. Not,
right.
I didn't progress as much as I wanted to. They don't. So like finding ways to help people kind of, well, help ourselves, obviously, right? Because we want to be the one level up, like you said, so we can help them do the same, so they know that that they are separate from that, and that isn't their worth, that they can continue to go and continue to grow and get better every single day. And
yeah. So I'll do the therapist thing, and I'll sort of bounce it back at you. When a client misses a goal, I know, right? This is the luxury I have.
Yeah,
Wait, let's just be real here. Just talk to Cindy as if she's the client, because I have this conversation off with her frequently. Yeah. So let's just role play here. So
right. Well, of course I'm going to ask, right? Like of issues that I deal with is because like attracts like, right?
So so what we want to do first and foremost is we want to model, you know, in a long-term relationship, we can begin to model a voice of grace for the people that we are helping. And hopefully they begin not just to integrate that voice of grace and take it in, but they begin to discern it within themselves as well. And so when someone doesn't hit a target, or, you know, fails to hit a goal, or doesn't follow through on what they committed to do, I think one of the questions is, how do you react to them? How do you respond in that moment? Do you have ways that you respond that feel adequate to the moment, like things that you like to say or do that try to that help in that moment to disconnect the person, their sense of worth from their disappointing week, for instance? Is there anything that comes to mind?
Are you asking me that question?
Yeah.
Yeah, I do now. I think like in the past I didn't. Like I think that this is called kind of a little bit newer process for me, but like I think I feel like there's two camps of Beachbody coaches. I really do. I think that there's a camp of you got to do it, and if you don't do it and you're not disciplined, then there's something wrong with you, right? It's kind of like that thing. That is not our team. Our team that's on here is the opposite spectrum of that is full of grace, but you know, there's still like those doubts where you see, I mean, we have a huge part of our business and how we help people is through social media. And of course, you know, social media and any kind of media in general, especially around health and fitness, it's really hard to put your blinders up and focus on what's good for you, right? And our client, it's hard for us to do it. We have to be constantly aware of it, constantly aware of the wording that we use on social media.
Mm-hmm.
Like I feel like I've personally tried to really change my wording that I use on social media to help people. So people already know, like if they're going to work with me personally, then they know they're going to get that grace. They know that they're going to, that this is like a long-term process that I'm willing to be partnered with them in, right? And so just, if you don't do this, then you're a failure or whatever, you know, like, and so I feel like that's kind of how I approach things with people. It's just like my kind of deal personally is I'm always, I teach people to get 1% better every single day. That's my kind of, I teach all of the coaches on my team and the people that I work with, and really just focusing on where you are now and just getting better. Whatever better is to you, right? Because I can't determine what that is for them. Beachbody can't determine what that is for them. No meal plan or exercise program can determine that, you know, so that's kind of where I try to work with them. And I think I'm kind of going in the right direction with that to help people, but you know, I doubt myself because there's shame and shame. I don't know. You know?
I think you're absolutely heading in the right direction with that. And you know, you talk about this idea of process and small steps. I think one thing that I would want to do for folks is gosh, this sounds horrible. This sounds a little provocative, but I would want to take away their hope. I'd want to take away their hope that they're ever going to totally get there. I want to say, you know, this idea that, well, once I know I'm worthy and my worth doesn't reside in my appearance, then I'll really be able to engage this process and I won't be so ashamed. And I'd say that's never going to happen. Most of us discover that, you know, I saw somewhere that someone jokingly said, the good news is God doesn't give us too many problems to work on. The bad news is we have to work on them our whole lives. That this sense of connection that we have between our worth and our bodies is something we'll wrestle with our whole life. You know, and so this week we get to wrestle with it again. This week you had a disappointment and it's frustrating to you and you're starting to feel all over again like you're as disappointing as your is your failure this week. And this is the road for you. This is what you're going to be working on. You're going to learn from this. This is going to be your teacher, this struggle, but this is your struggle for your life. And so not wanting to put any pressure to have it all figured out before you really get started, and to know that mistakes are part of the journey. But it sounds to me like you probably are communicating that already in a lot of really powerful ways. And my encouragement to you would be to keep going.
Okay, awesome. Well, that's good enough.
It's, a couple of things. The moment you feel like you have to help them make that disconnection is the moment that you start to try to do things and control things. And in other words, the moment that you feel like you have to make that disconnection for them is the moment you're now placing conditions on your sense of worth again, right? Oh no, they feel like a failure again. I've got to get them over that. Now you're, right. Now, I'm a bad coach. My career's never going to go anywhere. Now you're back in your shame, and you'll relate to them from that place of shame, right? So to the extent that in that moment you can maintain your sense of worthiness as a coach, right? That your sense of worthiness does not depend upon their weight loss, ironically, then you'll be able to relate to them and communicate to them from that place. So it is as much about your internal work in that moment and relating to them from that place as it is any specific advice you'll give, and so on.
So I have a question to piggyback off of Cindy's, because she said, quote unquote, clients, but I ain't gonna lie, I need this question answered for me too. I am a coach, but I'm also a client in my own skin. So why is it, and I think a lot of the times us as coaches, especially because we're supposed to be pushing, or not pushing our story, but sharing our story, sharing our journey, sharing our progression on social media. Like, hey, if I make it possible, it could be possible for you. So what happens, and I see this all the time. I see it within myself. I see it, I'm going to call some people, I'm not going to call anybody out except for my fiance that maybe is on here, and my coaches that are on here that I talk to all the time. But we do so good, right? Monday through Friday, we do so good with our nutrition or whatever. And then all of a sudden we, like I talked about earlier before I pressed record, I talk about Taco Bell, or I eat Taco Bell, or I eat something that my body is like, what the hell are you doing to me? Get this out. Like it's not aligned with my goals. And the first thing we do after indulging or skipping a workout or whatever, we build a wall around us in this wall of self-pity, of this shame, and we carry it like it's 100 pounds. Like for whatever it is, it could be a bowl of ice cream, it could be skipping a workout, skipping personal development for the day, anything like that. Yes, Katrina, tacos are life. But why is it that we get so hard on ourselves? We can't see, and I tell my coaches this all the time, why can't we see ourselves like other people see us? Why is it so hard for us to see our worst version of ourselves? Does that make sense?
Why is it so hard for us to live with the worst version of ourselves? Why do we?
Well, I mean, like, for example, like when I indulge, I immediately picture myself as 268 pounds. Immediately. Like,
I see.
There's no like gradual incline. You know what I mean? Like you immediately go to self-deprecation, like you just want to shut out, and the last thing you want to do is like, ooh, look at my non-six pack of abs on social media,
Yes.
So how do we get past that ourselves?
Yeah. Boy. You just laid out you laid out the dichotomy, the dualism, right? Either I'm killing it and I am, I've got the perfect body and I'm nailing it all the time, and I'm a beacon of hope for an entire world on social media, and so on and so forth. Or I'm 268 pounds and I'm no good and I'm a failure. And as you know from reading Lovable, the word, and I didn't know this at the beginning of writing it, but as I continued writing it, the word that was so influential in the book was ordinary. To embrace the beauty of being ordinary, which is always in this sort of middle ground, that there are no extraordinary superheroes in life, and there are no total failures either. In reality, that we're all ordinary. And so, I think of this personally for me. think one of the things that I care the most about is loving my family well, and raising kids who haven't had to live in a home where there's a lot of conflict and chaos and shame going on. And I've been really not good at that the last month, to be honest with you. I've been stressed, and they've probably taken on more of my shame than they ever need to. And so I can go to a place and say that I have nothing of value to offer the world, or I can be like, yeah, you're just sort of an ordinary dad, and that's okay. It's all right to be just an ordinary dad. How can you do ordinary a little bit better today than you did it yesterday? And not to put the pressure on ourselves to be extraordinary in any particular way, because as soon as we do that, we're setting ourselves up to experience the opposite extreme.
Like we experience failure because we feel like we need to be perfect.
Yeah, like setting it up as victory and failure is such a no-win situation, because even if you win, you're not going to win forever like that, because you are a human being. So to be able to give yourself the grace to say, I had an ordinary day today, and tomorrow I'd like it to be ordinary in a different way. I want to not have that bowl of ice cream, and I want to get to the gym, but that's ordinary too, right? Just to take that pressure off ourselves to outperform everybody else.
I love that. So Corinne asked, how do you help people who've left or checked out completely because of shame?
Is there a chat window I should be looking at?
There's probably an orange box glowing at the bottom. You got my fiance talking about Pizza Wednesday. You got people asking real questions up in here.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, hello everybody chatting. What did you just say, Vicki?
Corinne asked, how do you help people who left or checked out because of shame?
Who've left or checked out because of shame. Left meaning like left the relationship, or left
I think she's meaning like the people that no longer is coaching because they left Beachbody, or left coaching or Beachbody.
Like they tried the coaching thing, and then just their shame said, this isn't for me.
I'm not worthy. I'm not good enough. Yeah.
I'm not worthy. Well, Corinne, I'm curious, can Corinne chime in? Why do you feel like you have to help somebody else? Yeah, boy, I guess I've got enough to manage with my own shame. I don't know if I know how to, is it a friend? Is it a loved one? Is it someone, or are you asking a general question? I guess I'm wanting to immediately take the pressure off of Corinne or anybody else to feel like they have to do the inner work of anybody else. But I'm curious. Left coaching, left Beachbody.
Well, I don't know, like in this industry.
Corinne, hi. There you are.
We do see a lot of people who come and they're wanting our help, they're wanting our support. Some people will end up having great success stories, will overcome a lot of difficulties that they have, and we celebrate that together, and we build these friendships and these close ties. And then often what I've seen is that they'll lose that ground, and they'll stop to be as excited about living a healthy lifestyle. And then their shame starts to set in, and their fears of going back. And then they start to, backpedal, and then they just fall off and just say, you know what, actually I'm not it, or whatever it is. And then someone who you were working closely with and that you care about, because you build these friendships and you want the most of everything for them. Now it feels like I'm sleeping fine, but I'm just like, I want to be able to support these people too, and not be like, hey, well, bye. So I'm wondering what would be a way to be a good friend as well as a coach and a supporter.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that question. Sounds like sometimes in the success of Beachbody, or in the success of therapy, the kinds of therapy that I do, there's there's this little ticking time bomb of shame within it, right? That says, I feel this good because of my success, not because of who I am, regardless of whether or not I'm successful at this program, but because of this success. And so while the success is lasting, things are good. But then when it's not, as we talked about just a moment ago, things tend to fall apart pretty quickly. I just saw in the news this afternoon, you guys are probably all familiar with the name Tiger Woods, that he just checked himself into a DUI program. He's in another substance recovery program. And this is a guy whose success was infused with shame, right? And that as soon as he wasn't on top, his life essentially fell apart. So I think that the key is remaining in relationship with such people in a way that communicates that their worthiness in your eyes is unchanged from when they were on the top of their game in Beachbody or whatever situation it was, and continuing to seek them out and encourage them and let them know that your relationship and your care for them isn't dependent upon that. So again, modeling that for them rather than sort of buying into their narrative that they're not worthy anymore. And they can receive, so, and this is where I go to giving you some permission to not feel like you have to save everybody. They can then feel free to receive that from you, I think, or not. All you can control is whether or not you choose to remain present to them and encouraging to them.
Can I add on to Corinne's question real quick? And you could tell me if I'm wrong, Kelly, but I personally think that as long as you're giving love to someone, whether they're a past client, coach of yours, friend, relation, whatever, you give them love just like you would when you were close with them, working with them or whatever. But in the end, you can't help someone unless they're willing to work on themselves, whether they want to be as successful again, or they want to work on their own health and fitness, or, be like Tiger Woods and go to DUI camp or whatever DUI camp. I'm sure that's not it, but
it's probably not like a camp.
Whatever you said.
He's got his sleeping bag.
But you know what I mean? You can't help somebody help themselves, even if you were helping them before, but you can continue on just giving them love, and they'll receive it if they want to, or.
Yeah. Corinne, I think another piece of that is, I want to second what Vicki said, and also say that I've helped more clients because of the clients that I've had less success with, that I've learned from. I feel bad for the clients that I saw early in my career because there was, they didn't get very good care, but the things that I learned from not caring for them very well have borne fruit for clients later on. So if what you're starting to see and to learn is that people can have great success, but if that success is happening for the wrong reasons, or they're getting a sense of worth from the success itself rather than from who they are, then you can begin to, with future clients, learn from these past experiences and start to catch that earlier on. Again, the question is, why are you chasing the roadrunner? Do you think catching this roadrunner is do you think losing this weight, do you think looking this way is going to make you happy? Because we need to find a more stable, steady, and eternal sense of worth and happiness for you, because that's not going to do it, I promise you. And if you can begin to have that be a parallel part of your coaching as they're working on their physical health, then you're probably laying the groundwork for not having that kind of regression and sort of loss and departure at the end of it all.
Okay, thank you so much. Do you mind if I ask another question?
No, that's fine. Yeah.
Okay, so sorry, correct me if I'm misunderstanding what you're sharing too. I kind of understood that basically, or what I heard at one point was that
Corinne, I've got to turn off the chat because someone just asked if someone thought this call was helpful, and I can't stand to see the answer to that.
Oh, sorry.
Okay, I'm closing it. All right. Okay. That'll stir up the shame voice. Goodness.
Well, I know the answer, and you'd be fine with it. But anyway, I understand. So you had said, or what I had understood was that basically whatever shame we're carrying towards things we'll always have. but it's more to be mindful of it and then to look for the voice of grace. Is that what you call it?
Yeah, right.
But the shame will always be there. And then hearing that, I kind of like, my reaction is like, well, that seems kind of discouraging for someone who might be holding on to a lot of shame. So how do you help them, or even if it's yourself, like if you have this, like how do you find a really good silver lining that you feel you can grow from and live a happy and fulfilling life, one that you would dream for, even though you might be holding on to like really big mistakes in the past and things like that?
Yeah, great. It's a great question. I hear in that question like a lot of expectation, happy, fulfilling, dream life, and yet I want to honor what you're saying, which is it can sound a little bit minimizing to somebody who's carrying a lot of shame, and that shame is loud, and it's a almost an unbearable burden to say, oh, just listen to it. It'll quiet down eventually and you'll hear a better voice. I get it, that can feel minimizing, and I don't want to do that for people. But if someone came into me, like for instance, in a first session and started using words like happy, fulfilling, and to have that life they dream of, part of the therapy would be trying to relieve them of that pressure right away, and to say that the dream life doesn't exist. Happiness and fulfillment in the way that we tend to think of it usually doesn't exist. For instance, I'll give you an example. In the East, where mindfulness practices originated, the goal of mindfulness was to learn how to be present to any experience within you. Sadness, fear, shame, so on and so forth. That was the only goal, to learn how to be present to it and to live that experience to the fullest. What we've done in the West is we've taken mindfulness practices, which are a big part of what we do now in therapy and so on. And we've said, how do I use mindfulness practices to get calm and peaceful and happy as quickly as possible? Right? And in doing that, we're undermining the utility of the practices themselves, because they were never designed to do that. Mindfulness practices were designed to learn how to be present to our shame, sadness, fear, and happiness when it comes, and joy when it comes, and peacefulness when it comes, but also to be present to their leaving, to their departure, to when other things come in. And so if we can shift the focus from trying to attain a certain state or a certain outcome, and learning how to be present to all states, and learning how to endure all outcomes, now we're increasing our sense of resilience. Now we're increasing the probability that someone sticks with a program, that someone sticks with their life, and continues to engage it and seek the life that they want, and the life that they can actually have, and that is more realistic. So I guess it's, again, I go back to that idea of it. A lot of good growth and transformation starts with dashing hopes that are built on wanting a certain thing that if it happens is only present for moments at a time, right? The dream, the happiness, the joy, the fulfillment, even joy, it comes and goes. So I guess that's my reaction is wanting to prepare people from the outset that this is that life is not about escaping the hard stuff, but learning how to be present to it and moving through it.
Okay, thank you so much. I want this, if I can continue just quickly, but so in coaching, we do a lot of visualization, dream board, goal setting and stuff like that. And it's almost always happy things, right? So is it like what's your take on vision board setting? Yeah.
Good. Yeah.
Uh-oh.
Can I, while he's thinking, can I add to it? Because I was just going to say something similar to what Corinne added on. Yeah. Like we do as coaches, like not with our clients, but from the business aspect of ours, it's like Corinne said, a lot of focus for us is to set high personal goals, whether it's, you know, within our business, or we have a lot of recognition around success in our business and things like that. And those are things that are really socially displayed within our business. So like, you know, the whole like ego comes in because, you know, we're like, oh, we're on a leaderboard, or, you know, it happens, right? So like what she was saying, like, how do you feel about it? But I had a question about, so should we be more focused on helping for our coaches on our team, right? Because we want people to be successful, right? We want to help them be successful, not just in the whole fitness and weight loss, but in as entrepreneurs and business owners, like focusing on finding their, like the head of our team, Joelle, like she always talks about finding the joy in your own business. Like, and that's kind of what I think maybe it's different than pushing for these really large goals, but finding the joy in like the everyday. She talks about that all the time, like that it's not in the mundane and things like that, instead of the big shiny objects and stuff like that. But I don't know.
Yeah. No, I love that. I think I don't objectively, I don't have any problems with a vision board. I think that's one of the beautiful things about being human, right? We're the only creatures on the planet that can sort of plan ahead and desire outside of this present moment. I think that's a beautiful thing about being human. I think we have to ask ourselves which part of us is developing the vision board? Is it our true self, or is it our ego? Is it our shame? And I think what you start to discover is that if it's your true self, if it's your soul drawing up the vision board, then what goes up on the vision board looks a lot different than if it was your ego or your shame. I think a great example of this is anyone familiar with VeggieTales? The vegetables that illustrate Bible stories. So Phil Vischer was the creator of VeggieTales, and the company that he founded that created VeggieTales is called Big Idea. And I love that, big idea, right? Because that's got like ego written all over it. So Phil, I actually know Phil. I went to church with him for a while, and he'll tell you, he tells his story that he had such a drive with this company and with this VeggieTales idea to change the way that children thought about the Bible, thought about God, all good motivations, all good desires, but he had he basically over leveraged himself and tried to grow the company too big. And then he didn't leave himself enough financial margin basically to handle a lawsuit. He got sued and lost the lawsuit, and he didn't have enough money left over to pay the lawsuit and had to file for bankruptcy. And he lost the rights to VeggieTales. So Big Idea doesn't own VeggieTales anymore. He has a new company now. It's called Jellyfish Labs, right? And he called it Jellyfish Labs for a specific reason, because jellyfish are carried by the current. They don't determine their own direction, but they're responsive to where the currents take them. And so his company has a vision, but it never extends beyond a couple of years, because he recognizes that to plan beyond a couple of years is hubris, right? To think that we know even what good things are going to emerge in the next 2 years. And much of the company is centered around this idea of essentially being responsive to the nudgings of that voice of grace, and saying this thing that I thought I wanted to do, actually I'm realizing that was actually coming out of ego, and now I want to do this thing instead. So I think a lot of it has to do with not only it's not about do we envision and do we plan, but how do we do that, and where is that coming from within us?
I love that Cindy and Corinne both talked about that, because I think, as coaches, especially I think being a coach for 5 years, I've learned my lesson that when I shoot for a shiny object, that's not my true self. It's all ego, right? And that's why when I fail at hitting those big accomplishments or whatever, I get so like I'm paralyzed, right?
Yes.
Like we talked about shame on our last team call, actually. So everyone that was on that last week, we all did this. But So like I literally am paralyzed. Like I can't move forward in my business. I eat my feelings. I don't want to do anything. I remove myself from all my relationships. But then this year, like me and Cindy, who's been talking on here sometimes, but we talked about how as a team we're combining together and we're not shooting for those ego goals. You know what I mean? How we're working for the things that bring us joy every day, you know, like the connecting with the relationships, the, you know, being vulnerable, being our true selves, not talking about how, you know, we work out 8 hours a day and we eat celery and chicken, you know, how like we'll have bad days or we're not eating on the shift shop meal plan and we're having a glass of wine with our team or, you know, but we're
I didn't know we could have wine.
Oh my God, go get it. We don't judge here.
Okay.
But like how we can be real and experience the joy out of life. And like, you know, what I found is I think that, you know, when we, and you could correct me if I'm wrong, but when we shoot for something so, I don't want to like criticize anybody or anything, but for me, from experience, if I shoot for a specific weight, or a specific income goal or a specific rank, I notice that my heart and my soul in whatever it is that I'm doing is gone. With my workouts, I dread my workouts every morning. I dread what I'm eating every single day. I hate it. I can't wait till like the end of week 3 or whatever, and I could eat a loaf of French bread or, you know, what have you. But I don't like living my life like that. And I don't like putting on social media that you have to be perfect, that you have to be strict every single day with your power hour and I'm not saying girls don't stop doing your power hour. I'm not saying that, but I'm saying like, you can't be like, oh, well, I can't have coffee with my best friend from out of state and she's only here for an hour because I have to stick to my meal plan and I have to do this and I have to, and you know, my rank has to change on next Thursday or whatever, you know what I mean? So I feel like when we shoot for something that everyone else can see, but inside we actually feel dead, even if we do reach it, like, I feel like it takes the joy out of it. It takes the joy out of life.
Yeah.
Does that help?
Yeah. No, I mean, you're getting at like when your goals have these qualities of rigidity, legalism, duality, these are all like the giveaways that they're more ego goals than goals of the true self. Absolutely. Gosh, as you were talking, so as you know, for instance, writing Lovable, right? I have within me a desire for Lovable to do really well. I'll be honest. My ego believes that my life will be better and I will be a better person if Lovable is on the bestseller list. The ego within me that I will never be completely divested of believes that.
Everybody help him get there. Go post on your social media right now.
Yeah, feed my ego, please. But so one of the things I had to keep in mind as I was writing Lovable was that, well, in fact, so this isn't a story I tell in Lovable, but it was, we were discussing the third part of the book, a friend and me, an editor from a different publishing house who is a friend of mine. And we were talking about this purpose section of Lovable and how so much discussion and around purpose and passion is very ego driven. It's all about accomplishing and making a difference and having an impact and so on and so forth. And he said something to me that was a game changer for me. He said, Kelly, if anyone at any point in history could not have done the thing you wanted to do, then it's probably not your God-given purpose. So if being on the bestseller list is your sense of passion or purpose for this book, it's not the purpose of your true self, because bestseller list didn't exist 100 years ago, right? He said, now if writing is your passion and that's what you want to do and that's why you want to write this and that's why you want to publish this book because you love writing, that's closer. But as we got to talking, I realized that if I have a purpose, it's to as often as possible, as clearly as possible, to speak to others in the voice of a father that communicates to them their worthiness. So if I can do that within Lovable, that's a purpose I can get on board with. And now you see how the vision board is changing, right? From sell 10,000 copies of Lovable by March to Be faithful to writing it in the voice of a father. And when you're discussing it with people, make sure not that people walk away wanting to buy Lovable, but make sure that what people walk away knowing that they're worthy and they're okay just the way that they are. And that whatever else they want to do in their life is icing on the cake. Now that's a different vision board. And it's coming more from my true self. And I'm not as, and ironically, Vicki, as you point out, I'm not as tortured by it when I don't succeed in that. When I go, oh my gosh, my ego snuck in there for about 20 minutes and I was really kind of like trying to act like I knew it all. And all right, enough of that. Get back to being who you really are. And so, yeah, I guess I second all of that.
I think us as Beachbody coaches, I remember like, so me and Cindy and like a couple other of my OGs, we developed our like pages, right? And every day we would watch these suckers. Oh my God, I lost a follower. Oh my God, I gained a follower. You know, every day we'd stress out. I'm not going to call any names, but Cindy would message me, text me every day. Oh my God, dude, I just lost another follower. Oh my God, dude. It was like, and we did it back and forth, right? But I think when you change, just like you change your vision, right? You change your vision from focusing on the likes or the followers or whatever on your audience, but the value you're giving people every day. Like they're not going to walk away from like, oh, I followed Vicki today or, you know, whoever, but they're going to be like, oh, I got this taken away from them. And this is going to help me, you know, learn to love myself, or this is going to help me with a tip of how to get more water in or whatever. Like we change our focus from building that audience because that's an ego thing, but totally. We change it to adding value and what we can do, how can we serve others?
Yeah.
So
yeah. Well, and you're pointing out what a draw for our ego most of our modern media is. It's all numbers based, right? It's all hearts and thumbs ups and, you know, and tallies of those. And it means that when you're engaging your people in social media, you have to be constantly aware of that, triggering your ego and thus your shame, because your ego is there to protect you from your shame. And so when it's active, your shame's not far behind. And so it's not an easy job that any of you have, to be doing that, and to be faithful to your true self in a media that's encouraging you to think about everything else.
It's something that we have to practice every single day, right?
Practice I sent out an email this morning and 40 people unsubscribed from my list, you know, every week. And you know, there's always, oh my gosh, 40 people don't like me. How many people have to endure that every day? Right. But yeah, you just can't get caught up in that. You gotta go back to you know, speaking as clearly as you can from your true self in your next post and going from there.
So Cindy asked if you can share your email list with everybody.
Share my email list with everybody?
Or not your email list, but how to get on your email list, I'm sure is what she said. Maybe she had a little bit too.
That's funny. Yeah, I think I'd get in trouble if I blasted my email list out to everybody.
We want to contact them. They're going to be our next clients. Yeah,
right. Yeah, so certainly, I mean, so to get on my email list, you can go to my website. It's drkellyflanagan.com, drkellyflanagan.com. And in the right sidebar, you'll see a place to sign up. You'll get the free weekly blog post. You'll get a free sample of Lovable. And you'll get a free copy of my ebook, The Marriage Manifesto. So there it is. Okay, you guys Vicki, you just did that. That's amazing.
I got it.
Gosh. Oh, I can even type here. This is fantastic. So Cindy wrote dopamine, which is, I'm guessing you're referring to what you get on social media every time somebody does one of these. Yeah, I know, right? Talking about something that can't last for very long, a dopamine rush, goodness. So feel free to join the email list. It'd be great.
Corinne asked a question earlier. I'm scrolling through the chat box now. She said, do you find people can get comfortable with their shame and let that stop them from growing past that? Sorry. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, right. Like, not tortured by their shame, but just, yes, absolutely. I think, I think shame can become a familiar narrative, and there can be secondary gain to living in that narrative. It's really scary to move past your shame, to embrace your true self, and to realize there's a lot of things you want to do that you haven't been doing. And now all of life is going to be sort of new and unfamiliar and uncertain. And so there is certainly some secondary gain from sort of resting into your shame, staying small, staying invisible. And so there's no doubt about that. It's an incredibly courageous thing to do, not only because it's painful, but because what comes after discovering your worthiness is painful in a whole new way. It's, growing pains. So.
Awesome, thank you. I have a favor to ask of you, Kelly. So occasionally I like to give my team assignments, or not really assignments, but more of a challenge.
Yeah.
So last week I had everyone talk about shame, and I'm not gonna lie, we had a bunch of us crying, posting, crying, reading each other's, but it was really beautiful because a lot of things were shared. And some people look at social media like, why are you putting that up? Like, who wants to hear your story? Or, things like that. But we're not here to help those people. But I think, and forgive me if I'm wrong here, but I think coming out with your shame, whether it's on social media or to your significant other or whatever, is therapeutic because you're voicing it, you're becoming aware of it verbally. And so it will help you start moving past it.
Absolutely.
But so last week we did our Unshame. Do you think that you can come up with a challenge for everyone to do based off of worthiness or anything that we've talked about tonight?
I do. So it was, I guess it's probably about 3 or 4 years ago now. I was working at a counseling center where at the beginning, we take the summers off and then we get together again in the fall and do some kind of annual kickoff. And what the annual kickoff activity was this particular year was we're going to give each person in the group about a minute, and everyone else in the group was going to just shout out words that came to mind about this person. Obviously, words affirming their worthiness and their true self. In the same way that sort of being vulnerable about our shame helps to rob it of its power by saying it out loud to people that we trust and people we care about. Saying the words out loud that maybe we sometimes think are arrogant to say about who we are, or that we might think another person would feel uncomfortable if we said it about them. I would do the same. I would do the same activity about our sense of worthiness.
So like we post say a selfie on social media and be like, drop below, as my son would say on his current vlogs. Oh my gosh. Comment below something about my worthiness, or we're all going to feel that sense of being arrogant here. But I know we've all done describe me with a GIF or a GIF or, those whatever.
Yes.
But putting ourselves out there and be
I'm writing on social media. I'm trying to get better at receiving genuine compliments about who I am. So I'm open for compliments.
I love that.
Now doing that in social media, I don't know. If the Facebook algorithm decides that they don't want to put your particular post in all your friends' feeds on that one, and so you don't hear a lot, that would suck. But
that's your ego only talking to you. So
that's true. But I would also want to make sure that you also do it personally.
Reach out to.
You maybe schedule a time face to get together with a friend. Action is unstable. Can people hear me? Okay.
I think you froze.
Yeah, I think I did pretty. So am I back?
You're back. Yeah.
Okay. It's making sure that you also balance that with getting together personally with a friend and saying, we're actually just going to spend an hour having a cup of coffee or a glass of wine and telling each other what we like about each other. Let's do that. And you don't get to qualify it. You don't get to, oh yeah, but, or, You just have to sit and receive it and take it in and trust that this person is telling you something that is true and that they have a more accurate vision of you than you do. And the third, I'd say you can do it yourself all alone. You can do it in a mirror. I know that sounds cheesy.
I tell them this all the time, or post notes.
All right. It sounds a little Stuart Smalley, but yeah, I think being able to do that for ourselves, to be able to listen for that voice of grace. This is what I would want to tell each of you as you leave here tonight. There's a voice of grace that is saying those words within you that you need to hear, that seem too good to be true about you, that you feel a little bit uncomfortable because maybe it's arrogant to think that that's true about you, that you're conceited to think that's true. But there's a voice of grace within you that is saying those things. And I'd encourage you to listen for those words as well.
I love that. And not push back a compliment, because we're easily defending ourselves when it comes to, hey, I like your jeans. Oh, they were on sale for $25. Or, whatever we do, we always push back compliments.
Well, that was the amazing thing about that experience in that group, was I had no trouble throwing out compliments for everybody else. But when it was getting closer to me, I was like, I had rivers running down my armpits, like, oh my gosh, people are going to say nice things about me in public, like just terrified, because we weren't allowed to push back. We just had to sit and receive. We could not even say not thank you. We just had to sit and receive. Oh my gosh. Well, what was funny about that though, was then I remember I got home that night, and my middle guy, who was probably 5 at the time, because it was kindergarten, he runs to the door, meets me with something he had drawn in class, and he's like, Daddy, look what I made today. And I was like, dude, that's amazing. You're such a good artist. And he's like, yeah, I know. And it was just so refreshing. It was the contrast between all of us adults being like, no, it's not okay for me to receive these good words, and a kid who's just like, yeah, I mean, of course, it's true. And so to be able to get back to that little one in us that can just knows it's okay to receive a compliment, knows that it's true. There's nothing wrong with receiving it.
Yes. We all need to get back to that kid again.
You got it.
I love it. Thank you so much, Kelly, for this.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you. This is, I'm grateful to be a part of it. So thank you. You all are an encouragement and a blessing to me. So thanks.
We have a good team.
You do. This is really cool.
All right. Now stuff is going to get serious here.
Okay.
First, I'm going to end the recording, and I'm going to do it really good because I end the recording super awesome. So thanks for watching the recording.